What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and it's time for another community feedback. Happy Friday. This one is going to be on Are MMORPGs Dying or Already Dead? Brian put out an opinion piece on this. I encourage you to go watch it. It's a good listen. You know, it's around 15, 17 minutes long, which, speaking of things that are 15, 17 minutes long that might interest you, we do have our new highlights channel up where we've taken little snippets of kind of highlight moments out of our podcast in case that format's a little long for you to go try that out. Maybe you find a couple of our podcasts that you haven't given a whole listen, and there's something in there that you can jump straight to the spot that interests you over on our Casually Hardcore Highlights channel. Feel free to click the link down in the description below, and we'd really appreciate the subscription. We appreciate the growth that we're starting to see over there. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's move on. The Walk. Starting off with our first comment. A lot of people who grew up on classic MMOs are no longer have the time to devote to games like that. They want to be able to log in, do something. They don't want to rely on groups that may never form, and they still want to do the group content, but you don't want to necessarily be beholden to like other people to get that stuff done. And there might be a market where people take all day to go from city to city, or where you lose a level from dying, but for the most part, that kind of content is not something that interests you anymore. And I think that that's a good summary of why MMOs change, and honestly why MMOs are not one static thing, because what happens is MMOs continue down that track and they keep repeating the same formula until we start saying, I don't like this formula anymore. I don't have time to do this anymore. I start playing something else. And that's when you see games start to make major changes, or when you see new games start to pop up and have success. And that's a lot of the reason for the mechanical changes over the course of MMOs. Why leveling experiences are faster now, why level boost potions exist as a concept, why stories are told the way they are, why questing works the way it does, why combat is paced the way it is. Those are all responses of the developers to what we as the consumers have asked for. And it may not be a perfect interpretation, but it's definitely that dialogue. And we obviously, you know, just like when we vote in an election, we vote for the best of what is available. We vote for the least bad option sometimes, or sometimes the best of the good options when it comes to games. And that's based on a lot of things. So they have to try to gauge, okay, are they not buying ours because of our questing experience? Or are they not buying ours because of our combat? And then if they can get that feedback, and that's why it's important that we give feedback, then hopefully they can change that. And then that becomes the new best game to chase. So our second comment is from Michael Rivers. You used to put a disclaimer at the beginning of your comments. You've summed that up. It's not that it's dying, it's that it's been deformed. It's suffering from a disease known as live services or games as a service. And after noticing that people are willing to pay this for incomplete products or an extension to existing play, then companies have used this to, springboard and do more and more products like loot boxes and microtransactions and all that to turn players into payers. That all is it is a truth, but it is an oversimplification of what happened. As we expect games to have more in graphics, to have more in marketing, to have more in events like BlizzCon, FanFest, have a presence at E3, there's a lot of expense around an industry besides just an indie developer, two guys coding it that did the best they could with the sprite sheets. There's a lot that goes into a game. We expect incredible music. We expect incredible story. And we expect them to wow us at every turn, which means that they need to know the revenue's coming in, and they need it to be continuous. It can't just be a one-time paycheck for many of these games that are going to continue offering content after the initial serving. The initial serving can be incredible. You can get an Octopath Traveler or a God of War out of the initial serving. But if you want a Chapter 2, a Chapter 3, a Chapter 4, then they need to be able to secure money for that. And so subscriptions was one of those initial ways. And we've now learned that people don't like subscription games because they feel like I have to pay for the game, which some games are starting to get rid of that portion. And then I have to pay every single month, even though I don't really know if I'm going to like it. And so I have to pay out $45, $60 before I get to end game and really feel established. And sometimes $100. And I don't know that a game is worth $100. What if it's wrong? What if I try out, game A, game B is game C, and game C is the game for me? Now I'm out $300 in all these months, as opposed to a free to play. I can jump in and it's up to them to earn the money from me. And so we've, as a consumer base, have in some cases decided that some games need to be free to play so that we can try them out. And that's where those things come from. If we never bought a loot box and we preferred subscription-based games, they wouldn't exist. companies are following the money because they've got these big machines, and we like the fact that a big AAA studio can put out 100 titles all at a guaranteed quality. The cost of that is that they're not willing to risk something being bad in order for it to maybe be good. So they tend to keep it in that middle acceptable ground. And so we have acceptable AAA games from many publishers that we know that we're going to get our $60 worth. It's never going to be the game, that changed your life, but it's also never going to be, I can't believe they robbed me out of $60 is the theory. That's why we trust AAA studios. That's why when AAA studios let us down, we still pony up for the next one, because they've got a track record and they've got a big machine, and that big machine costs a lot of money. Indie developers, if you want to go find a game that was done out of passion, that was meant to be inventive and stuff, go out to Steam. A lot of those are under $10, under $20. They're cheap games. Philip DeFranco has his little ad spot, and there's always whatever company's paying him, and they're always selling those things at 30, 50% off, 70% off. They're out there. They don't have loot mechanics in it. They're passion projects. They changed the name of the game. The reason they're down at those price points is because we won't pay more for them, and we won't pay more for them because we're too busy playing AAA games. So the market's just simply not there. So I don't know that the industry is sick, but if it is, companies unfortunately follow the money. And if there was money in letting indie developers be creative, EA would find a way to just hire a bunch of indie developers and pay them. Activision, all these big companies, they would do that. The reason they keep these big 100, 200, 300 person studios alive, where they've got, a handful of devs, but they also have marketing people and game testers and level designers and music composers and storytellers and artists and all of these things, is because that's what we pay for. And so I think games as a service has given us a lot of good, and we're frustrated with it because we're seeing the bad. And the bad is there. But it's just the other half of the tab for the good. So if you want to focus on the silver lining, realize that games as a service also says if they expect me to stay subscribed for a year as part of their monetary plan, then it's their job to earn me staying subscribed for a year. So it's what causes Final Fantasy to have such big content patches. Even if they're repetitive, there's a reason that they're loaded, and it's because they want us to not unsubscribe after the initial content and then wait 2 years to come back. They are trying to keep us subscribed for more than 1 month every 2 years. And they have to earn that as a service. Unona, I don't feel the genre is dying, but I do feel the gaming industry in general is more focused on money making rather than making a great game. AAA games, I feel like, made a game cheap by slapping a fan favorite name on a poorly made game on poor content, and they don't really have repercussions because the name sells itself. It's a pretty big generalization. I would say that people forget that Fortnite didn't exist not that long ago. It was Epic Games built it off the back end of another game that was not nearly as successful. We can still have game-changing games that redefine a genre. That's what Fortnite did. Battle Royale was not a new genre, and it didn't come off a new game from a new dev team, from a new developer. It wasn't new at all. It was somebody changing the game. But to expect the guy at the top to take risks, why is the defending champion, who's won 27 races in a row, going to change their starting stance or change their form? What's doing is I can't get better than first place. So why would I change it? I don't have anything to gain. So if you want to see things change, if you want to see a new favorite name, if you want to see somebody who focuses on a great game rather than just keeping the money coming in, right, because they're attached to that, I think that what the gaming industry is realizing is that we can't just rely on AAA games to do it. Movies historically, the sequel and then that third one are, in general, not expected to be better movies. They don't traditionally do better from critics, and yet they do traditionally make more money. Because we know that the next Fast and Furious movie will have cars and it'll be entertaining action, and it doesn't have to have plot. It doesn't have to have good acting. It doesn't have to be good. It's good enough. I know that it'll be worth my 2 hours. And I don't know that about some random car movie I've never heard of with people I've never heard of in it. Even though it may be more of a passion project and less about just milking the box offices. So I would say that with the amount of frustration in the industry, I think one of the logical pivots would be for people to start giving a lot of these indie platforms a little more love. And maybe that's where something like Google Stadia can really have success, is that it can be a platform where indie developers can put their stuff and people can try it and they don't even have to have the hardware. I don't know. I think that the gaming industry releases dozens and dozens of games every month, if not hundreds of games every month, if you get beyond AAA. So I think if we're willing to try more things, there's a lot of brilliant games out there that we just don't try. So, name your genre. There is a game out there that will probably blow your mind and suck all the free hours you have. You just haven't tried it yet because it didn't get put in your face the way millions of marketing dollars could. Mythry. By the way, if you're looking for somebody that has a different perspective than us, but covers a lot of the same content when it comes to 14, Mythry streams a lot. Mythry puts out a lot of YouTube content. So definitely somebody that, may be a good fit for you. Go give him a shot. I think with everything as time moves on, the expectations change. Technology changes. In the next year, we have a lot of anime MMOs coming, so we'll see if they give people the changes they're looking for. That's really, I think, more of the attitude that I'm in line with, is just we've asked for change and we've been given change, and there's 100 developers out there all trying to listen to us, and they're all giving us their interpretation of what we're saying, and so we just need to find the right one. And if we're not liking the titles coming out in the next year, it's probably because we're looking at the wrong titles, because I just don't believe that in the last 10 years there's been 100,000 video games published, that there's not a good one in the stack. The question is, how do you find it? I think that's the question we have to ask, not why the top guy doesn't interest us anymore. I mean, some of my favorite bands of my childhood either A, don't make music anymore, or B, their tastes have changed and my tastes have changed. I don't even necessarily want to listen to the same music I listened to as a kid all the time. Sometimes I just want new music. So the question is, how do I find that new music? Now, there are services out there for that. Pandora, Spotify, the radio. I can do all of that. But how do I find that with games? And there are platforms like that starting to form, but word of mouth has always been that main thing. And I think really we just need to be better about, when we hear a game is good, going and giving it a shot. Saying that people don't tell good stories anymore would mean that you haven't tried a lot of the good story games that came out last year. Saying that all MMOs are dead means you probably haven't tried all of the MMOs. There's a ton of MMOs out there. You just need to find the right one. I personally find Final Fantasy to be a relatively solid bet, but it's not aggressively inventive. It's a good execution of everything I expect from MMO. So if I want to be surprised, then I probably need to go find something a little more obscure that doesn't have a whole bunch of people around the world supporting it. It probably doesn't have a language team in multiple countries. It probably doesn't have crossover events with other AAA titles. It probably doesn't have these things that Final Fantasy is allowed to do because it's just that big. Jonathan. As someone who started on vanilla WoW, it's not the same in the modern age. That being said, I want more mod support for 14. You and me both. To the people wanting to play Classic, I hope they go whole hog and disable add-ons because they weren't there in the original at first. Actually, they were. At level 60, I don't know when the first add-ons came out, but Curse came online, I believe, in like 2006 or 7. So Curse really got its heyday in the Burning Crusade. But before Curse, there was like, what was it called? WoW something, WoW Arc, WoW RAR, WoW. So, I don't know. There was a website, and there were a couple, but a lot of times what I felt like I had to do when I put on the first add-ons in my game was I had to go out to individual websites for each add-on and like download them through like torrent files or whatever, and then I would install them in my add-ons folder. So I mean, add-ons have been there. Add-ons have always been there. I mean, it's like people that say, well, no, gamers, you see WoW starting to cover Mac or something. That's not what Jonathan's saying here, but I've had people say, like, you can play StarCraft on Mac. You've always been able to play StarCraft on Mac. You can play StarCraft 2 on Mac. You can play StarCraft 1 on Mac. I could play Diablo 2 on Mac. These things have always run on Apple. So, as far back as I can remember, Blizzard's always supported that. There may be a day, but not before I had access to a Mac personally. As long as I've had access, they've supported it. And it's the same with add-ons. They've always been there. 14 choosing not to support them has more to do with the fact that they're cross-platform than I think any of the reasons that they hide behind. I think otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stop people from doing it. If there wasn't a cross-platform to it, just like ACT runs, well, they can try to ban it all they want. ACT is just an existing portion of the community. And if we were all on one platform, those things would take the industry by storm. The fact that we have PC and Mac or PS4 and Mac players that can't get access to them is where I think a lot of the pushback comes from, that will never budge and never listen and never try it out or realize, you know what, I'll just let other people play the way they want to play. And the benefit to that is it's allowed a lot of people who maybe don't traditionally want add-ons to not have to really worry about it. So it's not that everybody on PC wants them. There are plenty of people that don't. I just think that as a developer, you would realize, like, they would just realize like there's bigger battles to be won. So I think that they would just let it exist. And it's not that WoW lets any add-on exist. WoW has restrictions on what add-ons are allowed to do. They've banned add-ons. They've shut down add-ons. They've gone in and changed the way add-ons interface so that they can't do certain tasks. There are definitely limitations to stop add-ons from breaking their intention for their game. But the other side of that is they allow things like UI modifications and stuff like that, which a lot of the early add-ons were damage meters, threat meters, UI adjustments, things like that were just minor quality of life changes long before we got to ones where there was like quest add-ons and a lot of the stuff that actually now works natively. A lot of the native features they've added over the last 15 years were first put in as an add-on, unless they were around some type of content we couldn't have seen coming. Usually a lot of the UI changes and stuff are things that were pre-tested by add-ons, and those started as early as vanilla, to my knowledge. So I remember having add-ons at 60. So unless I'm just crazy, I remember using add-ons when I was raiding back in vanilla, which I guess now we'll call classic. I wonder if that'll feel different, if people will still define vanilla as vanilla and the classic as, well, that's classic. That's different. I'd say the genre is stagnant, not dying. Creativity is dead as a doornail, though. Most MMO, Final Fantasy XIV included, tend to stick to a tired formula and repeat ad nauseum. There's so many MMO games with so many great ideas and everything was different. Back then you played Star Wars Galaxies. Gosh, when I hear stories of that game, I was just, what? There was just this totally different game experience I wasn't having. But yeah, WoW killed the market. They dominated it. And everybody ended up having to mimic it because they just couldn't keep up. I mean, WoW is a game changer. It's when you listen to panels on why it looks so graphically like cartoonish and all that, like how it's got its own look. It's because people are like, well, they don't have the ability to do realistic. There were realistic looking games at the time. Now they weren't nearly as realistic as now, but the style was there. They said they wanted to turn the MMO experience on its head, and they wanted that to start from the very moment you looked at the game. So they decided on that cartoony style from the get-go as one of their distinguishing features so that you would know you're experiencing something drastically different. And it was addicting back then. And I wanted to put unlimited hours into it. And that's not an experience that I'm sure I'll have again now that I'm in my 30s, but I don't know. I hope that kids now are having the same passion for the game that I did, where when you get home, you just can't wait for that computer to boot up so that you can log on to that game. I hope games are still delivering that. And when you talk about ideas, when there were things that really try to shift it, I mean, BDO's got a bit of a shift. EVE Online's a drastic shift. Warframe is a drastic shift. Destiny tried to be a shift. Anthem tried to be a shift. World of Warcraft tried to be its own shift. Everybody's complaining about it being broken, but then they're complaining that these games are tired formulas. The breaking came from them changing up the formula. So the changes that people are mad about are changes. We can't sit here and say like, oh, I only want good changes. You have to know that when you call for change, you're going to get change. And it may not be all good and it may not be all bad. So I do think that people tend to say, okay, we're going to focus on this one aspect of this game. That's going to be us. That's going to be our home base. And everywhere else, we're just going to follow the leader because the leader is tried and true and tested. So if you're coming out with a racing game and you're like, what I really want to work on is the upgrade system. That's our focus. That's what makes us unique. you may, especially as a smaller developer, say, we're going to focus everything on the upgrade system, and how that may parlay. That may change the way you do racing rewards. That may change the way you have the storyline progress a little bit. But for the most part, your storytelling mechanics at a core level probably work like some existing formula that's out there. The way your track design works, the way your car mechanics works, the way your control scheme on your controller works. There's no reason to reinvent everything. I get really frustrated with a lot of the recent first-person shooters because they've broken the party system because they're trying to be inventive with something that I feel was right in like Halo 2. So I don't know why they're still changing it, but that change comes from the desire to find something better. And as long as they think there is something better out there, expect change and expect these diverse MMOs to exist. You may just have to look beyond the top 3 because the majority of the market still likes the existing formula. That's why the existing formula still works. And that's why it is the existing formula. The leaders are always kind of that meta definer. And then everything after that, just like meta in our game, we talk about, oh, well, this is the core comp of most raid groups. Maybe until it's not, until somebody tests out something that turns out better. So you have to look beyond that top tier group if you want to see what the upcoming thing is. If you want to kind of find something that's atypical, it's sometimes the top group sets the new trend, and you see that with like Final Fantasy. I think just did it with 14. They were already a top game, and I think they just took it that much further, but they didn't do anything new. They just did a better iteration of things we'd already seen before. There's nothing in Shadowbringers that's so distinctly new that it's going to change MMOs forever. What I think they did do is raise the quality bar higher than it's ever been raised for a launch. And so I guess I'm saying there's both sides. There's both sides. I can see it both ways. So guys, I think this is an interesting topic. I think that you guys brought up a lot of interesting points. It's an interesting conversation. YouTube is very much you listen to my voice and then you leave comments below and then we have a chance to respond to it in this way. So it's not a conversation in a traditional sense, but there is definitely a discussion here. And I think there's a lot of valid points. I think that one simple truth can't sum the whole thing up. There are different degrees of truth from each viewpoint that says like, okay, yeah, there is a form of how that came to be that is that, but typically to get it down in just a few minutes or into just a few sentences or something like that, you're probably oversimplifying something. I think that the developers have companies that provide them with stable employment, so those want stable choices, so they don't want to totally bet the farm on a change that's never been documented. So they do stick to only things that are documented. And then among the things that are documented, they go for the ones that we seem to have gravitated towards. So we as a player have a vote in that. If people weren't spending $1 billion a year on, FIFA loot boxes, they wouldn't have loot boxes. They wouldn't put a whole type of content behind that. And they wouldn't continue to base an entire franchise around it. But as long as it's making $1 billion, obviously, that's what people like. They vote with their money. So if you really don't like loot boxes, don't buy loot boxes. Don't buy game passes. Don't buy subscriptions. Don't do it. But if you like one of those things, that's where your money goes. So if you feel that games should be a flat $60, never more, never less, and should get none of your additional money in the form of merchandise, cosmetics, pre-orders, collector's editions, subscriptions, microtransactions, anything like that, then simply don't support a game that does any of those things. But I think you'll find that the majority of the market does support one or more of those as a form of making money, and that's why the developers who want stable jobs work at companies that take advantage of those methods. It's unfortunate when we see it costing us something, but it's the same reason you see people driving different or making unhealthy dietary choices or whatever. They're just following the path of least resistance, not necessarily because they're lazy or stupid or anything like that, but because they're just focused on something else. My top priority is not always the task you see me doing in public. I'm not always trying to be the best grocery shopper or the best eater or the best person at fitness or the best at going to regular doctor visits or anything like that. And so somebody who looks at my health records may say, wow, he's really not very good at this. And it's like, well, yeah, because I have other focuses. They don't see that I'm more of a person than just the initial part that shows up in my medical chart. They don't see the time I put into a YouTube channel that I care a great deal about. They don't see the time I spend with my wife or with my family or with my, on my job. And so we only get so many hours in the day and only so much effort to spend during those hours. And devs are the same way. So, sometimes devs don't necessarily want to change the mold. They want to collect a steady paycheck. And there's nothing wrong with that. They still get to work on games. They get to do what they want. They get to deliver a product that people find fun. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily want to try to reinvent the MMO every 3.5 months or every 2 years or even every decade. If there's something that's working, there's going to be companies out there that want to just stick with it. I like making games better than anything else. And this is a game that has a following, and that's good enough for me. And we'll change it up a little bit. I'm excited about this new change we have upcoming, or I'm excited about this thing we're doing a little different with the expansion. But I'm not going to totally redesign the game from the ground up. It doesn't make any sense. You see the Destiny devs saying that it's the pace they've been keeping is not sustainable, that they're going to have to find a more systematic way to update the game. Sounds an awful lot like every other MMO development. So it'll be interesting to follow them. I wish them the best of luck. My name's Chris with Work to Game. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely go check out our highlights channel. Those of you that have subscribed over there, thank you. Really means a lot to us. We are hoping that gets over 1,000 subscribers. That opens up some things for us on the back end of YouTube. You got to get over that 1,000 mark. So it allows us to monetize. I think there might be a couple tools locked behind it. I'm not sure. So we're just trying to start growing that. So we appreciate all the support you guys are having over there. If there's something different you guys want to see about the format over there, definitely let us know. We have not settled on anything. I don't even know that we've settled on anything with Work to Game. So we definitely take your feedback to heart. We don't change quickly, but we do change. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next time.
Do you guys remember Clyde the Couch Bear from the early videos when I was shooting in my living room and the couch was right behind me? Just wanted to do a quick update on his life. He has been way promoted. He's now guest bedroom bear. Doesn't flow as well, but definitely feels like he's got his own sweet gigs now that we have 2 beds in our house.